Hello and welcome to Serial at Midnight, and have I got a fun one for you. So this is a conversation with J. Allen Williams, the filmmaker behind Mead, a new film that is just now arriving on streaming platforms, digital on-demand platforms. There's a Blu-ray coming. We'll talk about it in this episode. But this is a comic book movie 50 years in the making. It's based on a 1972 underground comic from Jan Sternad and Richard Corbin. Think heavy metal, think 2000 AD. And all these years later, it's been realized as a feature film with Patton Oswalt, Robert Picardo, Patrick Warburton. But the path to get here is extremely unconventional. That's the joy of this conversation. Mr. Williams has taken so it's an independent movie, first of all. It's a very modestly budgeted movie, but it's huge in scope, it's huge in its aim. It's a completely green screen movie. The actors are not they're on a green screen. There's no reality here. It's all been done CGI, visual effects in a computer. But here's the thing. When you think about movies like that, you're thinking of Sin City. You're probably thinking of The Spirit. Those are Hollywood productions with a team, a visual effects team. This is the work of one man. He spent 6 years making this movie. All the environments, all the graphics, everything that we see that's not a real person was created by Mr. Williams in a computer. He had the movie finished before he ever rolled film on an actual actor. So it's extremely unconventional, and it's quite an achievement. It's never been done before. We talk about that too. This has never been done before until now. So how did this come to life? How did this creation take flight to to take the space theme to the next level? We get into all of that. Guys, if you appreciate this content, please like, subscribe, and comment on this video. These are things that you can do that help us get noticed in the YouTube algorithm. It helps other people find this channel. We're trying to grow Serial at Midnight, and we need your help. So please do subscribe, like, click the notification bell so you never miss a video. We put videos up pretty much every single day, and I don't want you to miss anything because we're talking to awesome people. Without further ado, here is J. Allen Williams, the filmmaker behind the new movie, Mead. I want to talk about everything. I want to talk about the comic book source material. I want to talk about how you made an independent movie outside of Hollywood that's this ambitious in this climate. I mean, during pandemic conditions, there's a whole lot to talk about. So where should we start? Let's just start with the comic book source, the comic book influence, right? Because
Right.
it's based on a Jan. I've never read it, but the Jan Sternad, and it wasn't a graphic novel; it's just a single issue, right?
That's right. It was called Fever Dreams, and it had two stories in it. And one of the two was a story called To Meet the Faces You Meet, which is a T.S. Eliot reference. And I actually wrote the T.S. Eliot poem into the film and then found out that it was public domain in the United States, but not in Europe. So I cut it out. And not only that, after cutting it out, I didn't feel like it made any sense to have the movie called that anymore. So we migrated down to just Mead.
Did you know Jan before the process for this all started? Do you guys have a relationship going back?
Not Jan and I, Rich and I did.
Okay.
Richard and I had worked together since the early 90s. He worked on a video game called Dark Star, the interactive movie, with me. He's helped me with a lot of projects. I've helped him with some of his, and we've just kind of had a relationship. And when I bought you saw the making of thing, but you know the story where I bought the comic when I was 12, a comic I wasn't supposed to have because it was an adults only comic. It had some nudity in it, which our movie does not. And I took it home and had to hide it from my mom, and actually said to myself, I'm going to make a movie out of this someday, when I was 12. So, and that naked lady is what kept me from making it until I did, because I didn't want to not give good tribute to Richard's work or Jan's work. But both of them said, no, we don't want to open your movie with a naked woman. I said, thank God. And what's another side story not many people know about is Cassie, who plays that character, which in the comic, she doesn't have any lines. All she is the illusion at the beginning of the movie. And you never see her again in the comic. Well, I wanted to make her a real character with strength and intelligence and humor. And so she comes over for her wardrobe fitting, and my wardrobe lady's here, and she comes over and she starts to show me her boobs. I was like, stop. She goes, well, I read the comic. I thought I thought you'd want to be sure. And I said, no, no, no. So I was almost a Harvey Weinstein without trying.
I was gonna say that's why you're the man apart from the Hollywood casting process. You're the guy
Oh,
who's like, no, 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 don't do that. It's just like you're
stop. I do not need to see those. They're wonderful, I'm sure. But no, and that's why I always had my wardrobe mistress there. If I had females there, just always was, trying to be sure everybody felt comfortable and all that. Of course, we had, COVID, like you mentioned earlier, that we had to worry about too.
well, you're talking about the source material, or we were, and it's a 16-page story, and you've
Right.
got it's about an hour 45, including the credits. What was the challenge in turning this short story? I mean, it's not even a short story; it's a 16-page, comic tale into this feature film.
That's a great question. And Heath, it was actually the opposite of a challenge, because something I learned about screenwriting, and I've done it before, is to get that perfect arc, with that all the payoffs and the, act one, act two, and act three. And to make that work. And that's the hardest thing about making a movie that keeps the audience engaged all the way through it. Well, the comic was a perfect storyboard. I mean, there's a reason that impacted me when I was 12 and continues into my adulthood. It was just a perfectly written story. I mean, you could have typed all the word balloons in that 16 pages, probably on 2 typewritten pages, which I had 100 and some page script, right? So taking that story that Jan had so beautifully crafted, with it had everything, it had, I can't give you spoilers, but it had these little points in it that just, kept you with it. And I added the comedy that wasn't really in the comics so much. There's a little of that, but I kind of added the comedy and just basically filled in the gaps until it expanded out. And I just be very careful to not mess with the arc, but expand the material.
And you have some very comedic actors as well. I want to talk about the cast, but I also want to make sure we talk about Patton Oswalt, Robert Picardo, and Patrick Warburton, all associated. They aren't just comedy, but they are very funny people. I'm assuming that was a deliberate casting goal on your part, is to bring in funny, talented people.
That is correct, because I always saw this as, I don't like to compare a thing to anything else, because, our thing came out 3 years after 2001: A Space Odyssey and 7 years before Star Wars. So our IP is way back in the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s. So I don't like to compare it to anything, but I felt like it should have kind of almost a Pixar feel, where it's got all this funniness and stuff, and you got the danger like in Incredibles, and then at some point it gets real. We're making fun of our bad guy throughout, and Picardo was the only guy that could have pulled that off properly. Be my Captain Ahab and yet make him kind of funny. But then at the end, have the menace to where the audience is going to believe he's going to kill Mead and Frizz, and then, I made my daughter cry. She was the first person I showed this to, made her cry. And I thought, I've got it. If I make somebody cry at the end of my movie, I haven't lost them at any point. They care about the characters. They're engaged in the story. They believe what's going on. So that was really important. And that happened at the theater. I mean, we did a limited release in California. We did one in Missouri. And I watched for people crying, and I caught a bunch of them. One of them was the really crusty bounty ship hunter, Captain, Simmons. And he came to me. He had not seen the whole movie. He only saw his parts that I sent him. And he came out and said, damn it, why didn't you tell me what happened at the end? I'm sitting there sobbing in front of people I don't know at the theater, man. And so it's like, good. Everybody needs to cry at the end.
Yeah. Well, there's several moments in it that have a real emotional heft to it. This is, from what I understand, this was a very unconventional process. The movie's almost is it entirely green screen? It looks like from the making of that there is no real practical set. It's just a green screen set.
This is the only movie in history. I can't emphasize this. This is Guinness Book of World Records stuff. We've looked. The only thing even semi-close is Sky Captain: The World of Tomorrow, and they had sets. We have no sets. There are no real chairs. There are green chairs that vanish in lieu of the chairs and stuff that are in the movie. Some of these chairs, as you notice, pivot and turn. So we had to create duplicate green screen props, chairs to match the ones in the movie. So in the animations. So yeah, the answer is there's not a single set. It's completely green. The only thing that's practical is things they hold in their hands. And then there are only two of them. There are two control panels that I created physical props for, so they would have something to touch. And you kind of see them in the finished movie. They don't show up very much. All surrounding them is this huge console of lit animated control panels, but then they've got this one about this big, in front of them that they can actually touch. Other than that, there's nothing.
What was this out of necessity? Was this I'm guessing this was not a $100 million movie. This seems like it was a very modestly budgeted movie where you have been, we'll talk about it too, because I want to talk about the animation. I mean, you have been, this is your baby. I mean, you work with other people, but this is your vision from what I gather. Did this green screen, did this come out of a necessity, or was it a deliberate choice that you've been planning all along?
It was a deliberate choice. I mean,
okay.
Obviously to have built sets that looked anything like that, we would have been into at least a 60 to $80 million movie. Yeah. And the time consuming of the building of these sets, it just would have been, I had 6 years in this thing. And 90% of it is done right here at this desk. I mean, all the animation, everything, all the editing. The only things that weren't done at this desk was about 30 days on set shooting actors in 3 walls of green ceiling and floor. Other than that, it was all done right here. And I had the entire film done before the shoot. I was able to show before we shot any scene, here's the room you're in. Here's the chair you're going to sit in. Here's where you're looking. And actually Jan came and he'd hold what we called the Mead stick. And he'd be floating this Mead eye line reference for the actors to refer to, so they knew where they were looking. And that's why when you look at the movie, you really can't tell that they're not looking right at that floating head talking to them, because we had reference, and I just pre-productioned all the hell out of all that so that we were ready, and we were.
What is your history in the business? Where does this come from? Where does this technical prowess? This is a bold venture, I'm telling you. I mean, because you're the only person that's done it. Where does this come from? What's your background with this stuff?
Well, I started making movies when I was like 11 or 12 years old. I had an 8mm camera my grandpa gave me, and I made all kinds of movies. I mean, me and a rotund friend of mine used to dress up like Laurel and Hardy, so we made silent Laurel and Hardy movies. And I did claymation, and I did flip books in the corner of my math books that I got in trouble for doing, So I got into animation stuff as a little kid. I was just fascinated by it. Then I went to the Kansas City Art Institute and studied some animation there, and I just kept doing that. I got into the advertising agency business, and one of my favorite things was to bring stuff into TV ads that were kind of like Mead, stuff you don't see in TV ads. And that was back in the early 90s, so the technology was barely there. I mean, I remember making a cardboard multi-plane camera at a TV station so we could do a grocery store ad. So I had all these Disney style thing, but I did it horizontally rather than the way Disney had their multi-plane cameras for like Snow White and things like that. So I built it horizontally. So we were shooting across all these different set pieces to get that rack focus and all that. And it came out really cool. So I started doing that kind of stuff. And then in about, at the end of the 90s, I started Dark Star, which is it was going to be a movie, but I just finished an interactive project. I never seen anything like it. That was a lot like Myst or Riven, you know those games. You're a geek like me. Yeah. So I just got the idea, I ought to do that. And so Dark Star turned from a movie into a huge interactive thing. It takes about 9 hours to play. It's got cut scenes all through it, science fiction stuff. So that was almost a 10-year project, including the promotion and getting it released worldwide and all that crap. My least favorite part of the whole process. So I did that. And then after that, I did a feature film called Everything, which I then shelved after it was done, worked on it for almost 4 years because I started Mead, and Everything wasn't where I wanted it yet. It was good, but it needed to re-edit. It just needed work. So I just shelved it and started with Mead, got Mead done. And actually in the last 10 days, I've been re-editing my first movie. So hoping to put that out. But I've only done 3 really big projects, and that's because they take so damn long, because I do so much of the work personally hands-on, and that's out of necessity. I can't afford to pay 300 animators, so I have one, and that's me.
It's you. I wanted to excuse me. I wanted to talk about that too, because in the making of feature that I watched, I don't know a whole lot about visual effects. I mean, I know some, but the method that you're using apparently is not the standard method. You're doing something that's more old school. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, one of my partners he owns a animation company called Trinity 3D out of Kansas City, and they are one of the 2 animation companies that do the television show Archer. And they just premiered their season 13, and I went to the release party and everything, had a lot of fun. But one of my partners, he's also a dealer of 3D Studio Max, which is the program I use. And it's a very robust, very well used by just about everybody for certain things, mostly architectural stuff. But it does character animation and all that too, obviously, because I have T-Rexes and all that.
Yeah.
But he was the dealer for that. So I bought it from him way back in the early 90s. And we've been friends for about 30 years. And he says it best in that I don't use plugins. I don't use special rendering modes. I use all the stock stuff. But what I do is I get my results by outputting all these different layers, bringing them into After Effects. So I've got 90 layers deep that have vapors and smoke, blinking lights, rack focus foreground, all this kind of stuff going on. So I just do it by hand. And I really, there's a thing called Unreal Engine out right now. And my DOP, Roger, was telling me about, you got to redo Mead and do it in this, because look at this. And, in literally 4 minutes, he'd set up a full scene that had everything photorealistic, like Mandalorian. And I was like, you don't have to be an animator to use this. You just have to know how to use the software. You don't have to be an artist or an animator. It does all the work. It's like auto-tune for singers, So I said, I don't want to do that. But we are looking at doing things a little differently if we do a series or a sequel or anything. We're already doing R&D on those LED domes like they use in Mandalorian, where they project all your animations there and you put the actors in there. So there's no green screen work. At the end of the day, when you're watching dailies, it's all there and done. It looks like it's supposed to do. So we're actually doing some R&D on that because we're looking at, taking it a little further at some point.
Well, you just hinted at something that I have to ask about. You said a series or a sequel. Is there more Mead to come?
We hope. I mean, we've got to make it work. We got to get some outlet to finance it, because I'm not doing that again. I mean, I pretty much financed, this one. Yeah. I'm not doing that anymore. I don't have enough years left in my life, but I want to do something else, and Jim is pretty keen to do that too. So we're looking at how we can do that, and then we have to find somebody to production company to produce it. So we have to show them that we can pull off the milestones and get it done, and we also have to show that this thing here has legs.
Can you talk to me about what you're telling me? So you've made this movie independently with almost most of the animation, all the animations from you. So much of this is you working in your studio. You're not in Hollywood. You do not have investors. There are investors, but you don't have studio financing. There are going to be people who watch this and they'll be, well, just go make a movie, just get some money and you go make a movie. But it's not that simple. Could you kind of walk people through the process of how you actually achieved what you've done?
Oh my. Well,
if you're comfortable doing that.
I am. I'm trying to figure out how to answer that. I guess one way to put it is I don't do these things. They kind of do me. So, I mean, the minute I'm idle, my brain starts going, okay, what am I going to do now? And Mead was always on my list as a kid, and I just did a demo of it, sent it to Richard, said, what do you think? And he was like, oh my God, you got it. That's when he introduced me to Jan. So we started working on the script, and the number one thing is you've got to have a great story. You got to have a great script. You've got to have really strong characters. I mean, Patton wasn't actually my first choice. We were talking to John Lithgow. That's who was in my brain when I was writing this. And then he couldn't do it because he had obligated to do 3 films, which hadn't given him start dates, and he was scared he was going to screw somebody. But his agent came back with Patton Oswalt, which I embarrassingly did not know much about at the time. So I had to hang up with them, say, give me a couple of weeks. I've got to rinse John Lithgow out of my brain and do some research on Patton. And I did, and realized, oh, he's the guy. And he was. We did. That's the only thing that we had to do in West Hollywood is Patton's parts. And he was just a pro. I mean, he's so good. So anyway, that's,
he's a comic book guy too. He's a huge comics fan.
he is, in fact, the Fever Dreams comic I bought when I was 12. Like 20 years later, Richard signed it for me, and I've always had it. I gifted it to him at the studio. I gave it to him. I kind of wish I had it back, actually. But and he had me hook him up with Richard, because he was a big Richard Corbin fan.
Okay. So you hinted that you financed a lot of this. Excuse me, you financed a lot of this yourself. What has been so you've made the movie, and now you've got to get it out there, and you've also told me that that's not a process that you love. Has it been challenging to get this out, to get this distributed?
I lucked out, and a producer named Adam Wright, who has worked on Pacino films, etc. I don't know how he got. I sent out an email blast to about 30 different the vetted distributors that I felt were trustworthy, and somehow he got that email, and he contacted me and asked me who I'd been talking to, and I did. And in an email, he went through every damn one of them, saying, well, meh, they don't have the Rolodex, real honest folks, but probably not who you need. And so he says, I'm going to take you out of the Shark Tank. And some of these were criminals. He goes, there's 3 of these that and I already knew this, you don't want to even talk to. So he said, I'm going to take you out of the Shark Tank, and there are 3 places that I prefer. And the one on the top of the list was Vision Films. And he'd actually worked in-house, I believe, there for 4 or 5 years. And he really liked the CEO, Lisa Romanoff. So we did a Zoom call, and they signed it immediately. They said, we want to do this. We want to do this. So it just seamlessly happened. I mean, I kind of was doing outreach for maybe a couple of months and doing research before that happened. So they took it over from there, and they've got it out there. I mean, they've got it on VOD, they've got it on cable, PPV, and they're doing a great job. The next phases are going to be the bigger fish like Netflix and Hulu and things like that. And then after that, foreign markets, but they're doing all that. So I'm not having to do very much of it.
Okay.
Although I'm doing tons of support, providing them all the stuff they have to have. It's a huge job getting a movie ready for market. I mean, the movie's done, right? No, it's not. I've got to do a textless version that for foreign markets. I've got to be sure everything passes what's called QC. It's got to go through LA Labs to be sure that it's not going to get kicked back by Netflix because there's a spike in the audio here, or that the dialogue crept onto the sound effects track or whatever. So there's a ton of work, production work that has to be done to prep it for everybody, plus doing the authoring of the Blu-ray that you're holding in your hand there. All that stuff has to be done.
Yeah. Where people are going to ask, where can, I know there was a Kickstarter campaign. Where is, if people want a physical disc of this and they want to support this and have it on their shelves, is there a place they can go do that?
Yeah, it's going to be in Walmart, Amazon, I think Target. It's going to be in the store websites. I believe it should be available. What is it? Not 8th. It was going to be mid to late September. We kind of had a debacle with our closed captioning titles and things like that. We had some problems getting those exactly right, so it kind of held us up. We'd hoped to have the DVDs and Blu-rays out by August 9th, which is our official release date, but that just couldn't happen. As far as the Kickstarter, those guys were great. They helped us, but I mean, that was maybe 20%, maybe less of it. Basically paid for 2 actors is what it did. I had 60 actors. But it was, I mean, we couldn't have hired Picardo without it. It was a great thing. And they were so supportive, and their names are all, as you saw at the end, in credits, and they're in there. So it was a wonderful thing. But yeah, the rest of the money came directly from me. And then I had some post-production help from some producers that I've known for many years that came in and helped me kind of survive while I was in the editing compositing process, because I had to work on that for 6 months after the shoot, 16-hour days, 7 days a week, 6 months. I didn't see anybody. I started talking to my plants. It wasn't pretty.
Talking to your plants.
Talking to my plants and the Mead head. You can't see him. He's a, see if I can turn the computer. Nah, I can't. Let me grab it.
Okay.
Yeah, here's Mead.
Nice.
And so this is the actual physical prop that, you know, we only needed him for one scene. He's animated everywhere else, but I had to have him, you know, animated for a scene.
And if there's anybody who's watching this and they're like, wow, this guy's really chasing, I mean, you mentioned Pixar, they're like, he's chasing that Disney thing. That's what Mead looked like in 1972. That's a 50-year-old design.
That's exactly right. I mean, and the exterior of the ship, same thing. Those are Richard Corbin designs. I mean, I stayed true to everything he did. In fact, the comic book, we talked about it before, that arc, every single frame in that comic book is a storyboard frame from the movie. I mean, same camera angle, it's all there. So it's really true to the comic, which, as you remind your viewers, is from, you know, 3 years after Kirk and Spock originally hit TV, you know, way before Star Wars, way before Alien, Predator. None of those were around. I'm just waiting for some internet troll, and we've got tons of them that hate Patton Oswalt because he's a little left-leaning. But I'm just waiting for somebody to say, you just ripped off Guardians of the Galaxy. It's like, well, I guess I need to get my attorneys called Guardians of the Galaxy, because if anybody ripped anybody off, it was them.
Oh, wow.
So,
it's true. It's half a century old. It's been around for a long time. And Richard Corbin, we should also reference, I mean, heavy metal fans know him, the magazine Heavy Metal, not the music. Well, maybe the music style too, but these are pioneers in underground comics, and in and you've made kind of an underground movie which carries the spirit of that on, which I think is really, really cool.
And Richard was an animator himself. In fact, what's interesting is we both went to the Kansas City Art Institute exactly 20 years apart. He went the year I was born in 1960, and I went 20 years later. We both went in there with his artwork. You had to go in and get accepted. And he went in with his artwork saying, this is what I want to do. And they said, this is stupid. So he had to fight the teachers and the instructors his whole time. Same with me. I took my artwork and I took some of his, and I showed his, said, I want to make movies of this. And the guy actually said, they will never make movies from comic books. And I was like, okay, wow. Steve Seidlinger, I need to go find him, do a Josie Wales. Look at this, you know, Iron Man. You know, Spider-Man. Yeah. But
one day that's all they'll make is comic book movies.
Well, that's all you can see at the theaters just about, other than Maverick, you know. I mean, that's what's going straight there is the big bets. You know, used to be B movies would go straight to VHS, you know. Well, now they're not B movies. A movies are going straight to VOD or streamers. And I mean, Dune almost skipped the theaters. And the director threw a huge fit. It was in my contract, boys. And they did that unprecedented thing. It was released simultaneously on both and kicked ass on both. And within a week, they got their sequel greenlit, which I'm so glad they did. It was a great movie.
Well, it's a crazy time right now. And I wanted your input on that, because you made a movie outside the system, and it's got, you know, it's unconventional times. Even Warner Brothers is like, send it to streaming, and they seem to be downplaying any sort. Did you hope for you know, I know you did have a premiere, and you had a world premiere, you had a North American premiere. Did you hope for theatrical distribution for this, you know, wide, you know, 3,000 screens when you were working on it?
Never. I mean, any independent filmmaker that's thinking that is on crack. I mean, you know, the big guys are having trouble getting in the theaters, and the theaters are going bankrupt. I mean, one of the big ones just filed for bankruptcy just yesterday. So I really hate that. I hated to see drive-ins die, because I thought that was such a romantic Americana kind of thing. Well, certainly these theaters are. And the theater in California that we did our big release in, Robert Picardo officiated it. And it's the Orinda Theater. And it reminds me of the movie The Majestic, if you've ever seen that, with Jim Carrey and Martin Landau. But that theater that was in that's what the Orinda was like. and it's been totally redone and gorgeous. It's a piece of art. The frescoes go up like 40 feet in the theater room, and just an amazing structure and a romantic way of taking your stuff to an audience. And so no, I didn't think we would, but those things just kind of happened and fell into happenstance. But it was very limited, but got to see it on the silver screen 7 or 8 times myself, once with Robert there with a microphone talking and making jokes, and just it was a blast.
Well, it brought everybody to tears, right? They all
Not everybody, but if I get a few in the audience that cry, I'm happy.
But now everybody can see this. It's streaming. You just told all the places that it's headed to, but it's available right now. Tell people where they can watch this right now.
Oh, goodness me.
You don't have to.
Well, no, I can give you I know I'm going to screw up and leave some off. It's on Vudu, Prime, DirecTV, Suddenly, Comcast, pretty much most of the PPV and VOD destinations. It's not on like Netflix or Paramount Plus or HBO Max or anything like that yet. But the first was to just put them out on all these others. And so, gosh, you can go to visionfilms.net, I believe it is, and look up Mead, and it'll tell you where all you can see it.
Okay, and I'll put links in the description of this video, and as more outlets are announced and as retail editions start to arrive, I'll promote those on social media and anywhere that I can. The process of this, it sounds like it's not quite over yet because you're still doing these foreign market editions, but as you wind this down and you pick back up the other movie, have you had any time to kind of reflect on what you've accomplished, or are you still too close to it?
I'm too close to it. I don't even think of it like that. It's just part of, it's just part. It's so many moving parts, and just putting out fires and getting things done. And a lot of it's little mundane things. You're right. With Mead, I'm almost finished. I mean, it's totally pretty much in Vision Films' hands at this point, the distributor, and they're doing a great job. They have from day one. And I got to hang out with Lisa Romanoff in California. She flew out and attended our big premiere on the 6th. Pardon me. And so they've done a great job. They got a great team. Jake Robb over there in their tech department. They've got some good vendors that they use that I've worked directly with to get what we got to do done.
Before I let you go, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about that we didn't cover? I want to make sure we really cover everything it's a really wonderful movie. Not just because it's unlike anything that's being made right now, both in terms of the finished product and in how it was constructed. And I think that's worth celebrating. And you've accomplished something pretty amazing here.
Well, thank you. It looks so much bigger than it is. I mean, like I say, it's all done on an iMac right here at my place, and pretty much by one guy, until I bring in the crew and the actors who contributed so much. Robert Picardo has become a personal friend over the process over the last couple of years that I've dealt with me. Stayed at my house and I was here for my birthday and cooked me a big salmon dinner, and just that relationship has been great. I've developed a lot of new wonderful relationships. I just want to say, anybody who wants to make a film, do it. I mean, you don't have to do something as crazy complex as Mead to begin with. The best thing to do is keep it small and focus, but make it great. Beautiful photography, great performances. It's like 12 Angry Men. It's all shot in one room. Do something like that to start out, something that doesn't cost a ton of money. Don't be shy about using your iPhone to do your first thing. And it's really hard to get anything out there, no matter how good it is. If you're producing it independently, you don't have a lot of backing, and it's all in the marketing and getting relationships. And just over the years, I've slowly built enough decent ones that, I had a lot of shortcuts that helped me kind of get from point A to point B. And Adam Wright hooking me up with Vision was kind of the coup de grace of putting this on the right path, because I wasn't going to get, distributed by DreamWorks or anything like that. They're busy putting out their own things and not losing their ass on those. They don't want to lose their ass on my thing. The nice thing about my thing is it costs so little to make. I mean, there are cars that cost more than my movie. You know?
Really?
Well, like a Lamborghini or a McLaren, but still,
Yeah.
a Ferrari. At least it's a nice damn car.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's all the more impressive. So it's a really fun movie that looks like it costs a lot more than a car. So I want to reference people to, again, all the links are here. I'm gonna sign off with you after. I'm gonna say goodbye to you after we finish the recording. But guys, check out the links, check out the movie, support. We always champion independent creators here. The studios, we love movies, but the studios are making something different, and we want to support the people that are out there sacrificing and really putting it all on the line. Independent voices need a spotlight more than ever, and I'm so happy that you're here joining me to talk about your movie. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, Heath. Be sure everybody goes out if after they've seen it and give us honest reviews out there on IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, Prime, wherever they happen to watch it. Give us some honest reviews. We are suffering from what some of the big movies like, the Buzz Lightyear movie suffered from. We're getting what's called review bombing, where there are people giving us bad reviews that couldn't have seen it. Half of them are coming from overseas. They couldn't have seen the movie yet. They're going off the trailer and they're just bombing it. A lot of them are Patton Oswalt trolls, we're finding out. Rotten Tomatoes does a pretty good job mitigating that, but IMDb, for example, they're terrible. So we've had a ton of fake reviews put up. So we need to battle that with people who actually have seen the movie and like it. And hell, if they don't like it, give it a bad review. I want bad reviews from real people, not from bots and stuff like that. There's also what's called reverse review bombing, where some of the big movie distributors are guilty of doing the opposite, filtering in 5-star reviews when they're not real aggregators. So you got to watch out for that. But thank you, Heath. I appreciate it. Appreciate you watching the movie, the kind words, good questions. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Guys, thank you for watching. Check out the movie, and we'll catch you later.